Good evening, good evening, good evening, and welcome to Couch Conversations with the Doctors, where health is wealth. What night is it tonight? It is Monday night, and it is time for Couch Conversations with the Doctors. As always, we're going to go around and introduce our esteemed panel to you guys. As always, starting with my colleague who leaves us and goes and have fun in the sun, but it's about 100 degrees in Chicago right now. So I think he's probably basking wherever he is. And that's our very own Dr. Douglas Graham. Dr. Graham.
Thank you, Nikki. I'll just let you know I am going to wait till it cools off. Then I'm coming back to Chicago for the month of July. So I'll be back home. I'm a retired physician. I spent 30 years working in the western suburbs. And after I retired, joined the congressman in his office. And let me tell you what an astonishing experience that was. It's an honor to be here with my colleagues. I'm going to try and answer your questions as best I can.
Outstanding, outstanding. To the world-renowned urologist who hates accolades, but the question is there a doctor in the house? That's our very own Dr. Terry Mason. Dr. Mason?
Good evening, good evening, good evening, Nikki and my colleagues and congressmen. We're just grateful to be here and to be able to be of service in answering questions that you may have. So, in the words of the late, great Marvin Gaye, let's get it on in a few minutes.
All right. To the man who says I threaten him to be here on every Monday night, but he's always on time. And for all of you who have been asking for the last couple weeks, where is Dr. Miller? Well, here he is. He's back and he's in great shape once again. Our very own Dr. James Miller. Dr. Miller.
Good evening, everybody. I'm happy to be back and happy to be doing better. I was off because I had been contrary to what my restrictions are. And in the process, I injured my back, and that is something that I really didn't want to deal with, but I had to deal with it. And I am better now, and I'm so happy to be back here with my colleague again. I'm a retired internist. I retired in 2019. Spent about 40 years practicing West Side and all around the Chicagoland area. And I'm happy to be back on this panel. As over the years, I've learned a lot of things, and hopefully I have something to share with you. One of the things, even though I've retired from the clinical practice, I'm still trying to do what I can to heal the community. So I'm happy to be here with my colleagues, and not only to share, but also to learn.
Outstanding, and thank you so very much. I want to say hey to Joyce Brenda Ballinger, who is here with us. Also to Kimberly Alexander Jackson, who is here. Hey, Kim, over at CP2 Real Estate. How are you, Kim? I want to say hey to Sister Bonnie, who is here with us just as well. We have a great guest on this evening who is here with us. And right before I introduce our guest, it's the father extraordinaire who is a physician by day and a DJ by night. That's our very own Dr. Pete. Dr. Pete Thomas.
Hey, Nikki, can you hear me?
We can hear you. We just can't see you, but it's okay.
All right. Well, I'm extremely thrilled to be here. Looking forward to hearing our guests. Happy to participate in this forum that you and the congressman created, and so I'm looking forward to sharing with my colleagues tonight.
Outstanding. I want to say hey to Judge Marianne Jackson, who is here. She says, good evening, everyone. And to the person who just wrote, that's my HIV specialist. I guess you're talking about Dr. Pete. Okay, he's yours. You can have him. Well, you can share him with us. That's what we'll say. To our great guest who's here with us on this evening, who wants to make sure that your mind, body, and soul is right. And he constantly teaches mindfulness, just like our Dr. Jasmine Searcy used to. That's our very own Dr. Jangi. Dr. Jangi, why don't you introduce yourself to everyone?
Great. Thank you so much. Good evening, everyone. I'm very pleased to be here and to be part of this forum. And I'm here to listen and to learn. And at time, if you have any question, please let me know. It is my really honest pleasure to be here. I've been working, just a quick FYI, on the West Side for over 30 years. I'm really familiar with West Side of Chicago, and it is part of my love for West Side of Chicago. And I'm currently the CEO and president of Bobby Right. So I'll be here joining you, and God willing, every time you meet, I'll be here. And if I don't bug you, I will ask you questions so you could bug me. So I'll stop there.
Outstanding. Well, to the man who makes this possible for us each and every Monday night, to the one who constantly teaches us that true wealth is health, that's our very own Congressman of the Illinois 7th Congressional District, Congressman Danny K. Davis. Congressman? You're muted, Congressman. I think we're having a few technical difficulties with Congressman's phone.
There we go. We ought to be
There we
okay.
go. Okay.
Yeah. Well, let me thank everybody. Thank you all. We are delighted. I just finished up Father's Day, and I had just a wonderful Father's Day. Oh, it was incredible. It was unbelievable. Lots of activity, lots of food. I got about 10 more ties. I'm in good shape. I just got to find some place to wear them. And I want to welcome Dr. Janji because he is a part of one of our community's most renowned institutions, the Bobby E. Wright Behavior Health Clinic and Programs. And of course, I'm always excited because Bobby Wright and I were classmates when we did our master's degrees. And then Bobby went on over to the university to do a doctoral degree in clinical psychology. And I decided to do something different. But Bobby and I used to ride to class together. We used to go to conferences together in his Volkswagen. We'd always go in his Volkswagen because it didn't use as much gasoline. And we were scraping for money. But one of the real pleasant experiences that I've had during my lifetime has been being a friend and associate with Dr. Bobby Wright, a behavior health phenomenon. Unbelievable. So welcome, Dr. Janji.
Thank you, sir.
And let's get it on, as Dr. Mason said.
Thank you.
Well, fantastic. Well, actually, Dr. Jingy, the first question kind of is for you. I have an anonymous question from a person who says, hello, I am in law enforcement and I am just simply fed up with some of the things that are happening in our community. In the last 4 days, we have had an uprise in shootings and murders in our city. Not that we are the worst, because we are not. However, we have these programs, but what can we do to curb some of the violence? Right before you answer, I want to say hey to Pamela Dominguez, who is here. Hey, Pam. And she says, good evening to everyone. I am going to give you a call on tomorrow. But thank you so much for checking in. I want to say hey to Valdemir Talley. Hey, Chief Talley, who is here. And he says, good evening to everyone just as well. Dr. Jangi, go right ahead.
Great. Well, that's that question is it's really complicated how to answer that question. I know the violence is rising, and I know there is a stigma associated with seeking help. And I know individuals who are especially impacted by the violence. It is really usually difficult for them to seek out help. What I would suggest is continue doing what they're doing. I know we have a great police department in the city of Chicago. I know they are doing a fantastic job. I know they're all under a lot of distress. And as you said, Nikki, we are not the only city. I think we rank like 25 to 30. Other cities are worse than we are. As far as getting help and recommending individuals, each community has community service centers. The city of Chicago even has free services, and Cook County as well. We have a lot of services that individuals could go. What we could do is we need to, all of us, pull together and address this. And I know there has been a lot of programs. Walk Against the Violence was the recent one. And I know Congressman has another event coming up. And we have been partnering with hospitals and our collaboratives to make sure we address those issues. And we are welcoming individuals who have been impacted by violence. So it's not an easy answer how we could get rid of the violence. Violence is part of our human nature, but we could work together and make sure that we address the stigma about seeking mental health or behavioral health services to reduce some of these issues.
But let me ask you, because the individuals who commit many of these acts judged to be okay to go to trial. I mean, they exercise a behavior that suggests that something is wrong with them. I think if you go out and shoot somebody, something is wrong with you.
Mm-hmm.
And so they're able to stand trial.
Mm-hmm.
What in the world can we do? Can we point these individuals out in some way? Or can we learn about their behavior and the prognosis for what they are likely to do before they do it? Is there a way to spot them as they are growing up and say, if we do certain interventions, there may be a way of preventing them from getting to the point where
Yes.
they go out and shoot somebody?
Mm-hmm. Congressman, a lot of research have been conducted, and my colleagues, they all know that prevention always helps, always deter those kind of behaviors. Do we have enough prevention? That is a question. We have a lot of prevention programs that definitely does that, and I think those crimes that are committed by some individuals, they may not have had the opportunity to be part of those programs. And I think all my colleagues, they have worked in their many years, they could also attest to that. They have seen individuals, they have referred individuals for those prevention programs. Definitely, the earlier we provide prevention, the better the outcome and the prognosis are. Even for those individuals who commit the crime and they end up being incarcerated, there are programs available inside either the jails or the prisons that they do try to assess them. And once they are discharged, there are programs that we do at Bobby E. Wright. We do work with the state and with the county. We do warm handouts. We try to help them and connect them with services and assist them so they become better citizens and productive citizens, and they're not committing crimes as they did before because we implemented those preventions. So I can open it up to my colleagues to also address that. I think preventions are there. It just need to have more preventions and be more effective in doing those preventions to make sure that these individuals with this kind of behaviors do not end up committing all the crimes.
I'll chime in. I wasn't I didn't participate in last week's discussion, but I did view it later, and it was a great discussion, and there were some great points that were made. And I think Dr. Mason made the point of the changes that are occurring in our community and how some of the things that used to be are no longer there. And I sort of I thought about that comment and also about some of the other discussion that was going on. And when when you bake a cake, there are some essential ingredients that makes it a cake. And if those essential ingredients are either not adequate or not present, then it's not going to taste like a cake. It's not going to be like a cake. And so some of the things that were pointed out before that, there's a saying about throwing out the baby with the bathwater. We've had some changes that brought some good things, but it seemed like along with those good things, some of the good things that were there got displaced or got dropped on the way. And those were some essential things like love, sacrifice, caring, not just about yourself, but caring for others, your friends, your family, your community, having a desire to make things better for everybody. Those are some essential ingredients that goes into making up the community and that contributes to the behavior and the even the attitudes of its citizens of the community, the members of the community. I can remember back, when I was a youngster or a child in the community, there were certain things. I mean, I didn't at that point have the appreciation for it, but learning about the results as I grew and understanding that it instilled and it put some values and put certain things in me that helped me to become the person that I am and have a concern and not just be not just for myself but for a community, for others. And so what's happening, I mean, the dynamic has changed, and therefore when the dynamics of the community change, then the individuals are affected by that. And then we begin to see individual change, and then things just sort of get it can get into a bad situation because again, once you take away the essential ingredients that makes up the things that make people that cause people to come together to care, when you take away those things, that love, that caring, that ability to cooperate, that ability to get along, that ability to look out for your neighbors and your brothers and your sisters, when those things are lost, then we have a community that's going to behave and function in a different manner. And so some of the things that we are seeing, I believe, is that that soul of the man seem to be have been affected in a bad way. I mean, I used to I've gone to see some of August Wilson plays, and he often wrote about the man that lost his soul and about how his behavior became different, how his attitude became different, how he related to people in a different way, how he himself could not receive the happiness, joy, and the satisfaction that life should provide. So all these things, the soul, the heart, the love, the caring, I think that there has been a change in that. And I think the answer is figuring out what can we do as a whole. Well, individually, it's not a lot that we can do, but as a whole, what can we do to address this, and what can we do to help to restore some of those things? I think that's where our answer lie.
Well, Dr. Miller, and I think if when we do the root cause analysis of why some individuals go that way, it's the pain, the pain and suffering, individual pain and suffering, and not being able to have a voice, so they explode. And I think that's where it is. That's where most communities and most individuals deal with when there is so much pain within the individual, for whatever reason, whether it's family, whether it's a community, whether it's unemployment, whether it is unjust treatment, whatever it could be. It is that pain that makes individuals to go to that extreme, to behave in such a way that is, we call it not normal, and it's unusual compared to majority of the population.
You know, I'm listening to the conversation, and there are a number of things that that strike me, and I'm not going to go through all of them. But I grew up in Chicago in a community called Inglewood,
Mm-hmm.
and I grew up there with a lot of other families and people. Because what's some of it's that's missing is some of the glue that used to hold families together. Not just the individual family, but the community as a family. We grew up in a time where everything that we see today, much of what I see today, is the antithesis of what I saw growing up. In terms of the types of music, the things that people say, the way they say them, the anger that comes across in some of the music that you hear today, and the fact that it's not these young people's fault who put out this kind of music, but there's the corporations that make a lot of money leverage using these young men to create this kind of music and then create a kind of different self that is enforced by the behaviors that we all think that we all would say are negative behaviors. And the structures in the community. I mean, I talked about this last week, but the way that we used to work, the way that families and communities looked out for each other, the way that everybody's child was everybody's child, that the way that we had to respect, first of all, for ourselves, but our parents would not permit us not to have the kind of respect for ourselves and our neighbors that we see as flaunted today. And so the issue around, and I'm not trying to blame any, because there's one thing that's done this, but when you look at the differences in music, because music tells a lot about, now some of the music I'm talking about, many of you, including myself, would find difficult and offensive to even listen to. But you've got to understand this is the reality that the people are listening to. And you got to realize that there's a profit motive that drives that kind of thing. That when you look at, we could talk about it, but I don't blame the people. People are trying to figure out how to make a living for themselves. And so, it was Interscope Records that put out one of these big contracts for one of these young people to even have a video where they're showing guns and flaunting guns. So it is, you can't look at part of it. You got to look at all of it. And we can't blame the victims all the time. We can't do that because there's a why behind a lot of that. And what happened to cause the family to be so destroyed for any number of reasons that we don't have neighborhoods. I mean, may not have them like we used to have, but there's a lot that's changed in the lifetime that I lived. Like I said, I saw growing up in Inglewood, and I lived in Inglewood, and I remember how it changed. And I remember even some of my own family and what have you that were shooting and doing all kinds of stuff. But that never would have happened under the old paradigm where we had respect for elders and where we had respect for ourselves and we had a love for our families and our extended families and our love for our community. So I'm going to stop right there because I can get on a box and I won't get off. But you got to remember, this just didn't happen. You look at what happened to families, what the welfare systems did to a lot of families, how it encouraged the fact to not have a man in the house and in order to get welfare benefits, how it made it difficult for wages that were sustaining to continue. I hear, and I'll say stop here, I remember talking to some of the elders, and they talked about how 43rd Street used to be the street, and people used to get all dressed up and shine shoes and have long suits and long dresses on. I mean, there's been a lot that's changed, and we're not going to be able to go back in time. We can't turn back the hands of time like Tyrone Davis say, but we got to look honestly at what the issues is and not what people tell us they are, but we got to look from what we see for ourselves and in ourselves with ourselves.
Well, I think another factor, I agree with my colleagues, that people don't realize is a lot of these kids are acting out of fear, right? So many of them, when you talk to them, back in our Project Brotherhood days, we would go to the trauma unit on Thursday nights at County. And when most of them were affiliated with various organizations, street organizations, but when you just drill down, they were acting almost preemptively. So I'm going to do this to keep you from doing that to me. Um, to me, that's PTSD. That is the definition. That's a DSM-5 diagnosis for post-traumatic stress disorder. They've lived this sort of stressful life, and they know that some impending um, doomsday is coming. So they create the doomsday for someone else. So that I think that's one of the problems. The other issue is from a primary care perspective, we don't have enough resources in terms of mental health services. There's a dearth of mental health providers, particularly ones of color. I'm telling all of my younger people in who are pursuing medicine, man, psychiatry is the way to go. You can write your ticket with that if that's what you love to do, but it's such a need for that. And even if you decide to go to the psychologist way, that's okay too, where you're not writing prescriptions. Definitely, we need people to refer. We need people to refer to, because I'm seeing patients who are stressed, and who, when I get ready to write a referral, it's months before they can see someone. So I'm having to act as therapist, as prescriber for medications that could help stabilize their condition. The other aspect that we don't get a chance to dive into, and that is this idea that I don't know if the prevalence is any more now, but definitely when people used to be depressed, anxious, bipolar, schizophrenia, whatever, rarely did they act on those ideas and thoughts. Now I'm seeing people act out what they are actually feeling. So now, instead of this person just feeling down and just, going someplace and sit down and go be quiet in their house, no, they're acting out what's actually the whole stress and depression and things like that. And so that's another issue that I would love to, if this was a research, if there was any opportunity to do research, I would love to see, was this the pandemic that did this? Where, because we saw stress and things like this. I don't know what happened where somebody actually, now people will get into a car dispute, shoot each other on the highway. It used to be you would give somebody the finger and keep it pushing. Okay. Now, I don't condone none of that, because I don't condone that. But what happened to that when we could just have a little sign language and we was going to keep going our way? Now people are shooting each other on the highway. When did that happen? Or people are beating each other up in the chicken place. How? Why? And so it's just, so I'm seeing patients, and I'm really encouraging patients not to I probably send a probably one person a month to the ER for psychiatric, where I'm not sure you're not going to do something to hurt yourself or someone else. And then I tell them, I said, when I say, do you want to harm yourself? If you answer, I'm going to send you to the ER. And they'll say, yes, I'm going to do it. I said, well, you hit it. Let's go. Because I don't trust that, because the reality is I'm seeing it firsthand. We're seeing it. And that had somebody could have intervened with some of these people that are doing this, then maybe we wouldn't have as much of this. But again, like Dr. Mason said, it's so much that if I coulda, woulda, where did the family go? There used to be an uncle or brother or somebody there to help redirect. But now we got the internet and we got social media, and these algorithms are feeding our kids stuff. And once they know you spend 16 seconds on this video, they show you another one, and they keep showing it to you. So that's the problem.
Well, I think everybody's talking about the same thing. We are not just mentioning it. I think this is systemic issues. I don't think it is family issue. I don't think it's an individual issue. I think it's the system issue. And the system for years, even reading about Dr. Wright, back then in 1960s, we are still dealing with the same thing that we dealt with in 1960s, 1970s. Nothing has changed. And as long as the system is in the same processing or they do the same processing, none of this is going to change and things going to stay the same. Again, people nowadays, especially kids, we are talking about younger people, and I think adults do it too. We have learned to want a quick fix for everything. And we want to say, I want this resolved right away, right? It's like going to fast food places. And I think treatment has become in the same model. I want it now, and I want a lot of it, and I want it to resolve it now. So the patience has kind of gone away from everybody, and we just want to fix it. But we all forget this is the systemic issue. Unless we address the system, we are not going to address the problem. We could put band-aid on our problems or our deep wounds, but it's not going to go away.
So want to
Yeah.
say hey to Audrey J. Cox. Audrey J. Cox is here and she says good evening to everyone. Want to say hey to Ed Beckham, who is here with us. Keith McDonald is here with us saying great conversation. Upindu Parker and Karen Warren Castleberry is here just as well. Want to say hey to Neva Lubinton Johnson. Hey Neva, how are you? Dr. Johnson, that is. She's here with us just as well. Well, Pamela Dominguez says, 1 second, Pam, I see your message. Pam says, well, this is a great concern of mine, and I am looking at spiritually trauma as a viable resource. She also says the lack of spirituality is the missing ingredient. Well, Valdemir Talley says prevention with the restorative justice piece the community needs to be and feel whole. He's also agreeing with someone saying absolutely. He also says, in my day, church held those essential ingredients. So he's saying church was holding the ingredients. Pamela also says, also, the community / neighborhood churches are not involved like they were in the past. The churches were a place where many community issues were addressed. Well, Dr. Jangi, you was talking about that microwave society that our youth tend to live in. Dr. Miller, I think you were trying to weigh in on the microwave society. Put it in the microwave.
Yeah.
It'll cook a whole meal.
Yeah. Again, we are treating symptoms in these situations, and unfortunately, treating symptoms usually don't get rid of problems.
Yep.
And it is we may be doing this because we haven't come up with a solution for the problem. But the thing that bothers me is that I think that we have to begin to focus more on the real problem, because treating the symptom just allows the problem to grow and to get worse. And that's what I think that's where we begin to see the evolution. It's evolving. It's becoming, what we see today seemed to be worse than it was last week. And but all of these things that we're seeing, the shooting, they're symptoms of a deeper problem. And whatever that is, and I understand that there's no quick fix for this. It's something that's going to take a long time. It's going to take a lot of work. But I think that we need to start working. Young lady addressing the issues of the church. Well, the church is the people. The people are the church. And so as people change, then the behavior of the church changes with them. As people change, the how they as they begin to change, they've changed how their spirituality is, how they relate to each other, their concerns, their all these things change with people. So it becomes, again, how do we fix our relationship with ourselves, our relationship with each other, with others. That's to me is the crux of the problem. Some of these things I would say have existed for a long time, but we suppressed. People were more able to suppress their desires, their emotion. And I think we're living in a time now where people don't just suppress; they tend to express them. And the problem has been rolling. It's been there. It's been boiling for a long time. But people were able to suppress it, and it looked like it wasn't so bad. But once that people have lost the ability to keep this undercover, now we're beginning to see it. It's no longer stay in the pot. It's coming out on the stove, and that's what we're beginning to see.
Well, Dr. Miller, I think one of the ways to start to heal, and I think to address this individually, it has to come from individual. To instead of pointing the finger, you have to take responsibility. And I think if whether we are including the spirituality, the medical field, the behavioral health, substance abuse, or the justice system, or any system, if we start as individuals not pointing the finger, but looking at ourselves and seeing what really bothers us and addressing that without worrying about the implication, I think we could start to heal. And I think it's easy, like the same thing with the fast food. We learn to point finger and blame somebody else for what's going on. And I think the system perpetuates that. The system says, okay, as long as you're doing it, you're fine because you're not going against the system. So I think that would be a good start for anybody. And I do agree, spirituality is part of healing. We all have to heal. Every week, every month, every year, this country, this city, our communities, they go through traumatic events. They go through a lot of painful issues. And it's easy to burst. It's easy to just blame everybody and go out and take it out on somebody else and say, okay, I'm going to hold it in. Even though if it's painful, I'm going to hold it in. I'm going to find a way to express that. So I think if we do that individually, we could start to heal a little bit and move forward.
Well, we have another question, and I lost the question. The question says, I agree with the system, and the system is broken. So I agree with you all talking about the system. However, I don't know if all of this is a us problem. Just over the weekend with these shootings, as the person spoke about earlier, they also had something called a butt naked drive. It was information all over the internet. And Clear Channel even allowed them to buy a billboard that says, join us for the butt naked drive. They did this on the west side at Augusta Street, and they attempted to do it on the south side. The west side tend to shut it down, but they had a pop up and pop out butt naked drive for Father's Day, where young women drove by butt naked with their bottoms hanging out of their windows, and they charged people $20 to watch. Whose problem is this? Where are the parents? Where does this come from? Well, Congressman, you have always been right. That pipeline to prison is really showing itself, and we need to stop it today. Sister Bonnie says, Dr. Miller, so true. Can we address that?
Well, let me just weigh in a little bit in terms of something. Earlier, we've heard a number of people say, as my mother would say, we got to go back to the old landmark. And I guess that's kind of what she meant in terms of behavior that was different. But we've also said we can't go back there. Since we can't go back there, I think that poverty, in one sense, dissatisfaction, and you can't lay it all on poverty except poverty of the mind. because we look at the shootings that have occurred, the mass shootings that were not related in a certain way to economic conditions, but were related in other ways to other things. So if it's not poverty that's driving it, it's dissatisfaction. I mean, people are dissatisfied about something. They are unhappy about something. They are not. I used to do group guidance when I worked for the Chicago Public Schools, and we had a certain amount of money coming out of the Elementary Secondary Education Act. And I'd be wondering sometimes, what do I say to 30 young people in a group? You know, we'd have these, some people did after school reading. I did after school guidance because I was, and trying to get people to open up and express whatever it is that's on their minds, or giving them or creating the opportunity to let it flow and let it go. So I guess we need to really start as much of that as we can when children are growing up, you know, second, third, fourth grade, or whatever the arena is. So it takes a lot of money, and we have to be willing, I think, to spend it or to use it to create, not just for the individuals who may exhibit certain kinds of behavior, but for the safety of the rest of us. Because when they have a scenario or scene, doesn't just harm them, but they harm all these others who just might be in the way. So I think finding the resources is one of our approaches that we have to use.
Yeah, I in addition to that, talking about the events of the past weekend, I lost a 13-year-old nephew that was shot in the head, the one on 13th and Independence, and died this past weekend. And I think money can do a certain amount of stuff, but there got to be something. There's going to have to be something that goes beyond money to uh, and we got to give more than just what we have in our pockets. Our
Mhm.
hearts are going to have to be better. We're going to have to give that. We're going to have to give that. And I think that and it's hard because nowadays a lot of people have been hurt, and then when you get hurt, you get a little bit timid and get a little bit shy and a little bit afraid to put your heart out there because you don't want to keep it getting it hurt. But without our being brave enough to deal with and to put our hearts out there, to give our hearts, even though it's gonna get if we risk getting hurt, we have to also understand that the ultimate reward from that is probably something that's going to be greater than the pain that we suffer from a heartbreak. Um, and so I think it's going to take a piece of us. Money can't buy that. Money can't buy a heart. How did the Beatles had some? There were some words in one of the old Beatles old song. I don't care nothing. I don't care about money because money can't buy me love. We need and so that part that part of us that love part has to become strong enough for us to be brave enough to risk us our feelings and even just because we're risking our lives already. Our lives are at greater risk now than ever just, you know, you don't even have to be out there. You can be sitting in your living room and be at risk. So we're talking about risking other things. And I think that we're gonna have to start doing it. And I think we have to start to doing it with children at an earlier age. We can't really wait
Mhm.
till children learn to behave in a certain way before we start to having more input into their thought process, into their upbringing. Even if they're not, even if you didn't birth them, they're still our children, and we're gonna have to realize that we gotta, money ain't gonna fix that part.
Well, Dr.
That's
Miller,
mhm.
Dr. Miller, I'm sorry to interrupt you. You're talking about two things. One, unconditional love, that, when you have unconditional love, you don't expect anything in return. You just give. You say it's unconditional. It's not based on anything. Two, money is really important. Many years ago, I was in the state of Arizona, and the state of Arizona, we secured funding for the program that says first thing first. It was designated only for the newborn babies up to age 6.
Mhm.
We provided everything from making sure they have education, they have medical services, they have everything. And the name of the program, again, spoke for itself: first thing first. And this was years ago. Now I'm reading some of the research based on that. The success and efficacy for that program was so great that you start the intervention, you start services, you start providing the unconditional love, include services. If a child needed special care, they would have started at age of the early,
Mhm.
depending on the issue, and then up to age 6, where the issues of development is starting, kids are starting to learn who they are. So those are the two things, and I think you touched upon. I think I just want to clarify it and say unconditional love. Money is important. We need to have a program like that to dedicate only for those things, if we want to start early on, so we could see the fruit of our labors later on, so we don't deal with so much pain and suffering and violence later on in life.
I agree with you both, but I can tell you that our country is more divided right now
Mhm.
than it's been in a long time. And the trends are that it becomes even more divided
Mhm.
from a political vantage point, from what is being taught, and what people seemingly are buying into. While we're not really discussing politics, but let me tell you, there are people buying into leadership, coalescing around it,
Mhm.
whose objective is to do nothing less than further divide the country, taking away thoughts, ideas, and actions that we worked 100 years to get to bring into fruition. Now there's serious efforts to take all of that away, beginning with the right of women to make decisions about their health. And we have religious institutions, um, evangelicals, I think they call themselves, who act like precinct captains for those thoughts and ideas that would take away much of the progress that has been made. And it's taken us 200-300 years to make it. And they're trying to take it and shake it, get rid of it. Uh, we're in bad shape.
Congressman, they're already shaking it. They're already trying to take it. It's not the plan. It's already in effect, unfortunately. And those things are impacting our health system. They are impacting our well-being. They are impacting every individuals in every corner, every street, every house in this country. Yeah, I agree.
There is, as much as many of us on this panel are physicians or work with physicians, there's no medical solution for this problem. There is no medical, there's not going to be a pill, there's not going to be a vaccine, there's not going to be any of that. And if we think that we can medicalize this, other than where it's obviously needed when people do need those things, but these things didn't get torn away that way. I'm not old, but I'm old enough to know what it used to be like. And I mean, I'm going back maybe just 30 years. And I've seen how this has changed. And one of the things that what I've seen more of now is that parents have less control over their children now than ever before, because they had all kinds of laws that were passed, some good, some not so good. But we have, and you look at what the so-called internet has done, and even now, even in churches, pastors have to get very vocal about, this, the kids on the phone, on their phones and tablets and what have you during sermons, something that we never would have had to think about before. So I'm just saying that it's a different world. And if we think we can take some of the old stuff that we thought would work it's not going to work. And there's no penicillin for this. There's no, there's no chemotherapeutic agent for this. And these things that we've lost in terms of our self-pride, our self-respect, our self-dignity, are willing to do for ourselves in our communities now. You even got folks from other countries frying the chicken. I mean, it's just a shame to see what has happened. And if we looked at those men and women who came up from Mississippi, Alabama, and all those other places, came up and worked hard to establish communities and get homes and have grocery stores and things of that nature, and look at where we are today, it's an abysmal shame. Now, I'm not saying everything, I mean, across the board, but we will need some definitely different sorts of things, because the enemies that we have to fight now, we don't have control over. And we don't have enough control even over what our children hear, what they see, what they watch. You can try to do as best you can. And now, in terms of putting behavior and just that we just talked about, these people meet these meetups and do all different sorts of things that can be put together in minutes with the technology. And I'm not saying technology is bad. I'm not saying that we shouldn't use it. I'm just saying that we've got a lot of tools now that for those people who want to see both people that look like us and people that don't look like us and not want to see us flourish and do well, they have all kinds of tools at their disposal to make sure that that actually happens, and to make sure that the attitudes and the mindset as to how people think and analyze things is totally different than the way that we used to think before.
Dr. Mason and everybody, and I think there were a couple of things that over generations and thousands of years have not changed. That may be the main ingredient of what we need to do. One is fear. Fear makes us do crazy things. And how it could be fixed is love. And I think it's through love. And as you know, we briefly discussed that unconditional love. And I think we have been disfranchised. The technology has separated everybody. The technology, when kids and even adults at the dining room table get all ingrained with this, iPhone and whatever it is in our hand, we forget what it's to be human. And I think we lose the love, we lose the connection. And I think that's the start. Yes, it is not a medical condition. I think it's a human condition. And I think we need to go back to the basics to understand, to teach, and to actually export the love that's needed to really address these issues.
My
Well,
mother thought that fear and unconditional love was the same thing.
Yep. It is part of huge part of love. Yes. Yes.
well, we have an anonymous message that says, Dr. Mason, you are absolutely right. It is not a medical condition, but I do have a prescription for it. Spare the rod, spoil the child. And then we have Mr. Tyler who says, I wanted to be anonymous, but no, I'm going to speak up. These kids need a whooping. I am not going to be anonymous. My mother whooped me because she loved me, and she told me she loved me when she disciplined me. We also have Connie Taylor. She says, good evening. And Natasha Hall says, much needed conversation. Terry Johnson says, yes, I agree. We must start with the children at an early age. Sunday school, Easter speeches, Christmas speeches, plays, vocational Bible school, etc. The neighbors loved sharing, knowing one another, not scared of one another. Terry Johnson also says, yes, from one Terry to Dr. Terry, so on point. Sister Bonnie says, facts. Pamela Dominguez says, truth be told. Terry Johnson says, yes, Dr. Jingy, say that. And Elizabeth Lockhart says, absolutely. We do have another, with Dr. Lockhart, we do have another anonymous question that says, our children learn more bad things in school from teachers than they do in the home. What do I mean by this? What I am saying is, instead of teaching reading, writing, and arithmetic, they are teaching things that I believe we should be teaching at home. Teach Black history and not teach sex. Let us allow us to teach this to our children ourselves. Our kids come home confused. You force them into things that they shouldn't have to learn. And then you wonder why we don't want our children in the public school systems. Thank you, ma'am, so very much for that comment. Well, I know you guys hate. Oh, wait, I got one more I have to read, and it's from. First of all, let me say hey to our people over at the Core Center. Yes, the Core Center is watching. They are doing great work over there, but they are watching just as well. And they said that I almost forgot about them. So I am sorry. I did not forget about you guys. The Core Center. Pamela Dominguez says all that has been stated, all is needed. Also, we have a group of pastors that says, Congressman, please have a pastor's voice on the panel next time just as well. I think we need a part 2 to this, and I think one of the pastors need to sit there and share in this conversation. Thank you so much, Pastor, for sharing your thoughts. I know you guys hate to hear me say this, but it's our time. So as we go around, we're going to ask everybody to share their until next Monday. All right, Doug, you're on deck. Until next Monday.
As I'm listening to the members of the panel, I'm thinking that we have a new public health problem. We have a new addiction, and that addiction is social media. And social media is one of those things that's fanning the flames of anger and violence. And so it's going to be up to us to find the antidote for that.
All right. Well, Doug says, is social media a public health problem? Well, Dr. Miller, you're until next Monday.
I think again, as I always talk about in healthcare, is that an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. And I think that we have to start to looking ahead and trying to figure out ways to prevent certain things from happening. Things that we see, you're not going to make social media. Social media is not going away, okay? But we can try to learn how to prepare our kids so that that the effect is different. And then we can also try to introduce things on social media that will be more positive and more reinforcing to a healthy life for our children, and not just all the that they only have the negative stuff out there. I understand that there are other things, but we have to work on those things. We have to work on making certain that our kids, you know, get those things. I mean, back in the day they said get the fear of God in them and the fear of mama's trap. But I think we have to teach them what it is, that there's harm out there, there's trauma out there, and that there's some things that are dangerous and it's going to hurt you, and you need to know what those things are. And I think that it's not an easy job, and it's not going to be done with one setting. It's a constant
Mm-hmm.
process that has to occur, and I think that's the approach that I think we're going to have to do that in some kind of way, because the things that we're talking about, they're not going to die tomorrow and then we can just go back to what it used to be. That's not going to happen. They're going to continue to be there. They're going to continue to get stronger with time. So if our kids are not prepared to deal with it, they're going to become the victim of it.
You are absolutely right. So Doug says it's social media a public health problem. Dr. Miller says, let's make social media more positive. An ounce of prevention is better than a pound of cure. Well, Dr. Mason, you're until next Monday.
I would agree with my colleagues that we need to use the technologies as best as we can to try and right this ship. But the thing that we need to remember that the fish always stinks from the head. and we've got a situation where even the man who is someone running for president of the United States can create insurrection, call for the killing of the vice president on national television. So where we get, what we talk about this, but what examples are people seeing in terms of the behavior that really needs to be mirrored? I'm one who has faith and belief that we could do this, but we always got to understand that the fish always stinks from the head. And if we don't do something about that, and not the heads of our own individual homes, our collective homes, and everything else, but that's where we all can start, and we don't have to go with nobody else's children. And I'd like to see junior achievement even come back. That was a great program, and maybe we could teach something there. But and Congressman, thank you so much for having this. And I agree that it's a lot of work, but to whom much is given, much is expected. So we got to do a lot.
Absolutely. Well, someone is saying, Nikki, please read this comment. Okay, I'm going to read it. If we have a part 2, can we talk about the false popularity that social media gives people? People begin to feel if they have so many friends that they are really positive, that they are really popular. And when they don't have these friends for real, they have some type of mental disorder that goes without having the popularity. Well, I've put it out there. I've let our doctors hear it, and maybe we can address it. We will try to address everything. We'll at least get you an answer. Well, Dr. Mason says the fish always stinks from the head. Doug wants to remind you that is social media a public health problem? Dr. Miller says, let's make social media positive. An ounce of prevention is better than a pound of cure. Well, Dr. Jingy, what do you want to leave the viewers with? What's your until next Monday?
It is hope. Even though we have so many issues and we have so much problems as society and communities, there is always hope. We have survived so many years. Painful, happiness, everything. There is hope. There is a lot of people who are there doing the work. I commend them. Myself, staff, everybody else that I know, hope. Please keep it up, because that's what is really needed in addition to the love that I discussed. Hope. We have a lot of hope. It will change. We will work on it.
Outstanding. Well, Dr. Graham says is social media a public health problem? Dr. Miller says an ounce of prevention is better than a pound of cure. Let's make social media a more positive platform. Dr. Mason tells you that the fish always stinks from the head. And then Dr. Jingy says hope. Well, let's keep hope alive. Well, Congressman, take us home as always.
Well, let me just thank all of us for a very robust discussion. And I think we reinforced what we always do, and that is that there are no simple solutions to very complex issues and complex problems. But I think we're getting ready to celebrate Juneteenth Day coming up. There are many things that we can do, and one of those is continue to dream. Langston Hughes said, hold fast to your dreams, for if dreams die, life becomes as a broken winged bird that cannot fly. He said, hold fast to your dreams and don't let go. For if you let go, life
Mm.
becomes as a barren field covered with snow. And so, as we discuss these issues, lay thoughts and ideas on the table, interfact, interact with each other, I just end by saying, hold fast to your dream.
Mm.
And you got to
Amen.
dreaming. You got to keep believing. You got to keep knowing that life for none of us really ain't been no crystal stair. Had a lot of tacks in it, carpet bare. But if you
Mm.
keep climbing, keep moving, you're going to get there. Martin
Amen.
Luther King said it, says, I may not get there with you. Said, but we're going to make it. Keep dreaming. We'll make it. Thank you all so much. Have a
We will.
wonderful evening, and we'll see you next week. All right.
Thank you.
Okay.